Hello all. So I'm going to go through and summarise a number of the 15 markers for education. So what I would like you to do is to make sure that these are in your 15 marker grid. So it's yellow and it will have differential attainment as the first term. So I've already set these as videos where I've fully modelled the answers to these questions and popped the analysis order this shows. But I feel it's very important that you have a summary of all of the 15 markers in one place to help you with your revision and to help just, with referencing and keeping on top of everything. So differential attainment is the first one. So differential attainment means different rates of achievement. Differential attainment is just different rates of achievement. And there are different rates of achievement for class, gender, and ethnicity. Different rates of achievement for class, gender, and I completely changed my chair. It's giving me backache, that chair already. Different rates of achievement for class, gender, and ethnicity. And then the 3 paragraphs would be as follows. So paragraph 1 would be on there's differential attainment for gender. There is a 9.1% gap in achievement. So paragraph 1 would be on gender differential attainment and that there's a 9.1% gap. In a 15 marker, we would like 3 sociologists where possible. So we always aim for 3 paragraphs with 3 sociologists or pieces of knowledge in each paragraph, and it must have this shows at the end. So for gender, 9.1%. We're going to pop Harris et al. Found that secondary school females tended to be more hardworking and better motivated. Males had difficulty organising their time. Oops. Secondary school females tended to be more hardworking and better motivated. Males had more difficulty organising their time and struggled with revision. So we're going to put Harris et al. Secondary school females tended to be more hardworking and more motivated. Males had more difficulty organising their time and struggled with revision. For Mitos and Brown, teachers are less strict with boys. They give more leeway with deadlines and expect lower standards of work. So I know Smith and Noble say 2 very different things, but we're just going to take that teachers are less strict with boys, they give more leeway with deadlines and expect lower standards of work. For Francis, that's Professor Francis, head of the Educational Endowment Fund, but don't misgender her, she is female. So Francis found that many boys think education is irrelevant and adopt an identity of effortless achievement, expecting high exam results with little effort is Francis. 3 sociologists, Harris et al., Mitos and Brown, and Francis. And then we would need a TS, always need a TS at the end. So this shows is AO2 or analysis. This shows there is differential attainment. with gender, as teachers are less strict, and do not push male students as hard. You could alternatively say, well, this shows there's differential attainment with gender because there's an issue with effortless achievement with males, and females may, be careful with the language, may be more hardworking and motivated. That's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 would be on class. There's differential attainment when it comes to class. So 21% of free school meals pupils achieved a 5 in both the maths and the English when the average was 46. Hopefully, but that should make you all a bit sad. So for this paragraph, I would do material deprivation with Smith and Noble. Forsyth and Furlong. Smith and Noble, material deprivation, lack of concentration, lower rates of attendance, and Forsyth and Furlong, the cost it's working class students off. For a third sociologist, I've given them 2 for material deprivation. For a third or a third point, you can have catchment area. And the Sutton Trust, that the best, I'm going to put that in the commas, that the best performing comprehensives, so the best performing, just kind of standard state schools, the best performing schools are more socially selective. They get to pick, and they have 50% less free school meals children. So they may be considered the highest achieving schools in the country, but that is because they are more socially selective and they have 50% less free school meals. So it may not be about the quality of the provision necessarily. It can be about things like catchment areas in more wealthy areas, etc. So those 3 pieces of evidence. This shows there's differential attainment when it comes to class, because some students may struggle to concentrate. It may have been an issue with higher rates of sickness and a higher turnover of teachers. We'll be very careful not to say, well, there's poor quality teaching in those schools. It's really much more complex than that. You show an examiner, you're not really clear on the complexities of it. And an issue with more poor quality learning can be a result of much higher turnover of teachers, who vast majority of their class have material deprivation and have issues that link to that. So the third then is ethnicity. There's differential attainment when it comes to ethnicity. Again, it would be useful to have some statistics there of the differential attainment when it comes to ethnic groups. So you're 49%. Oh, is it 49%? Ooh, I might need to double check that one for our Afro-Caribbean. I think the stats I've got in front of me are slightly old. But so Afro-Caribbean rates of attainment, and I would put Gilbourne. Black males are seen as a threat and disruptive. They are 3 times more likely to be excluded. Pilkington, evidence of racially discriminatory practices. In the allocation of pupils. I was generally use the same 3. Checking it's definitely recorded. Evidence of racially discriminatory practices, and then Gilbourne and Ball. It's always helpful to know, well, why do middle class Black children still achieve? And that the cultural capital acts as a shield. Lovely to see sociologists borrow other people's concepts as well. So borrowing from Bourdieu there. So 3 sociologists. This shows there's differential attainment when it comes to ethnicity, as some ethnic groups are placed into bottom set, where their grades are restricted. There's also an issue with higher exclusion, which means they're not being taught the curriculum. So this shows there is a differential attainment for ethnicity. Some groups are placed into bottom set where their grades are being physically restricted. Obviously, you can't get an 8 or a 9 in bottom set. There's an issue with higher rates of exclusion, and that means those groups are not being taught the curriculum. It leads to different rates of achievement. Remember, quite a lot of those exclusions can be due to wearing protective hairstyles and things, which is just even more worrying. So that's differential attainment. Okay. Briefly going to look at cultural defects as well. So with cultural defects, I suppose if I'm going a little bit too fast, you can always pause me. But with cultural defects, it's when the language, values, or culture of a group disadvantages them in education. This is a really kind of awful term, the word culturally defective, but it's the suggestion that the language, the values, or the culture of a group could disadvantage them in education. Okay, so the paragraphs are as follows. Paragraph 1 is when a group may be culturally defective if they lack or don't have cultural capital. So it would be that a group may be culturally defective if they lack or don't have cultural capital. So this paragraph is going to be anyone who mentions cultural capital. So Bourdieu, cultural capital. You can also add symbolic violence and habitus. Other sociologists that mention cultural capital are also Gowitz, working class are not, we're just changing the phrasing slightly, then working class are not privileged skill choosers. They don't have cultural and economic capital. So they're not privileged skill choosers because they haven't got cultural capital and economic capital. You could here either have, as an option, because again, we aim for 3, you could have Gilbourne and Ball, that working class Black groups don't have cultural capital, which means they're not shielded from racist setting and streaming. Or alternatively, you could have Sugarman, to give you an option there. The deferred gratification, present, future time orientation. Okay, at the end of that paragraph, this shows that Some groups, please make sure we say may, be culturally defective if they don't have cultural capital. Some groups may be considered culturally defective if they don't have cultural capital, which makes education familiar and can shield against setting and streaming and having grades capped. If you don't have cultural capital, it means education is not as a familiar environment, and you haven't got a shield against race, against setting and streaming, where your grades will be capped. Paragraph 2. So in my definition, I've made a point that language is part of culture. So in our paragraph 2, we're going to argue that could be considered culturally defective. Really hate that phrase. Really defective if you lack specific or key language codes. So here we're going to do Bernstein, the elaborated and restricted, and moded with a lack of fluency. I know there are different grids, but what themes them together is language. Okay, there isn't anyone else who mentions language, so it's going to stick with those 2 sociologists. Aim for 3, but it doesn't always work. So this shows some groups may be considered culturally defective, and as a result, they may struggle to understand teachers, the content, and exam questions. I remember may struggle to understand teachers, content, and exam questions, be that in elaborated language codes or a lack of fluency. Okay, paragraph 3, again, definition of culture is values. So we're going to argue here that some groups may be considered culturally defective if there's a lack of parental value of education, that there's an issue with parents valuing education. So I'm going to pop in here Phillips and Palmer. Argues that middle class are more child-centered. They focus on their children much more and can socially control their children. Their new right. So their argument is that basically working class parenting isn't as child focused, which is a problem, they would argue, and they can't socially control their children. So yeah, I'll leave you with that as a thought. They're the same Phillips and Palmer from childhood and toxic parenting and things. Middle class are more child-centered and can actually socially control their children. Also, we're going to note here for Driver and Ballard that South Asian parents have high aspirations. And really push their children to work hard and be successful. So this shows that some groups may be considered, Douglas. Missed one, didn't I? I was aiming for 3. Douglas. Most important factor is parental involvement. And can theorise that from the visits to parents' evening, but not recognising most working class parents are working 2-3 jobs and often work shifts, so physically can't attend. So We wonder the validity of that study. So this shows some groups may be considered culturally defective if they don't value education and therefore are not encouraged to complete homework and revision, making them more successful. Remember, so we don't evaluate in a 15 marker, but Professor Ray, who would point out that 97% of the poorest families wanted their children to go to university. It's really the system that disadvantages with setting, streaming, and very, 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 very costly university fees, etc. Okay, that one's cultural defects. Now going to move on to formal socialization. So formal socialization is when there's is learning skills, values, and norms within. It's learning skills, values, and norms. Leave it there, actually. Formal socialization is when you learn skills, values, and norms. Okay, paragraph 1. Functionalism argues that formal socialization provides skills needed for work. That formal socialization provides skills needed for work. It ensures society continues to function as well. It provides skills needed for work, and formal socialization ensures that society continues to function. Here we're going to have Durkheim, our founding father, that teaching history and RE, history and RS, should I say, history and RS. I think I accidentally put herstory there. Durkheim teaching history and RS is central to social solidarity and value consensus. Formal socialization ensures that we have social solidarity or togetherness and value consensus, lots of agreement in society. For Parsons, education acts as a bridge between home and work, ascribed to achieved, particularist to universalistic, all those lovely concepts. Davis and Moore, education is meritocratic. Differences are due to ability. Society is openly mobile. Okay, this shows formal socialization is needed to ensure society functions successfully and we all learn skills needed for work. Okay, paragraph 2, formal socialization for Marxism is designed to teach values like capitalism is good or your only option. The purpose of formal socialization for Marxism is to teach you that capitalism is good, it's your only option, and to teach skills needed I'll stick with that for the moment. I think I'm doing a bit too much analysis there. That capitalism is good or your only option. So we're going to have Althusser. Education is nothing more than an ideological state apparatus, tool used by government to teach ruling class ideas, again, like capitalism is good or the only possible viable option. Althusser, Bowles and Gintis. Education is about teaching good worker attitudes. It's about making you passive and docile. Bowles and Gintis is about teaching good worker attitudes, making you passive and docile. Paul Willis doesn't work here because they weren't passive and docile, sadly, because of their rejection of school is ultimately why they become, their rejection of the system is why they ultimately fail. So that doesn't work there because they were resistance. And Bourdieu, technically not a Marxist, but was influenced by Marx's idea of capital, doesn't work here either because he's kind of influenced rather than following that thing of socialization there is to keep you oppressed under the system. So it's only those two. So this shows that formal socialization for Marxists is about teaching pro-capitalist values. It's about teaching very pro-capitalist values, that it's our only option, and to teach skills that make you pro-capitalist ideas, to teach you that capitalism is the only option, and to teach pro-capitalist values, teach you that capitalism is your only option, and to teach norms. Think about that again. To teach pro-capitalist values, that capitalism is the norm, or our only option. This doesn't specifically mention skill. Okay. Third paragraph then is we're going to veer away from education a little bit with the socialization and look potentially at family actually that uses formal socialization. So the family can use education to teach norms and values that encourage educational success. So I'm going to do Douglas. Parental interest is the most important factor. I'm going to do Driver and Ballard. Again, South Asian parents have high, aspirations for their children. And Goetz, because she does argue that they often teach the importance, actually. Yeah, Goetz or Sugarman, I think. Teach the importance of deadlines. Right, so at the end, this shows that family, via socialization, can teach skills and values that encourage educational success. So make them complete homework and revision. You only get one of these 15 markers, so you'll see quite often what I kind of pull out is the impact is very similar. Okay, gonna now look at social control. Actually very similar. It's the same really. This is socialization and this is about how education controls us. So it's going to be functionalism and Marxism again. So with this one, I won't be explaining in detail or with any detail really the sociologist. So social control as a definition, which is really handy for you to have. Social control is when behavior is regulated. So social control is when behavior is regulated and is an important aspect of the socialization process. So it's when really behavior is regulated and is a really important aspect of the socialization process. So paragraph 1, for functionalism, it ensures that there is solidarity and that we have ideal citizens. That's its job for a functionalism, that social control will ensure solidarity and ideal citizens. So we're going to have Durkheim again, history and RE, Parsons, Bridge, and the 3 functions of education. Oops. The 3 functions. It's not getting happy with me, of education. Skills needed for work, socialization, etc. So functionalism, end of that paragraph. Means it's getting tired. This shows that education can socially control us. It shows that education can socially control us. And this ensures society functions. It's getting very tough. So this shows education can socially control us, and this ensures society functions. As we have social solidarity, value consensus, and ideal citizens. Okay, that's paragraph 1. I always find, generally, there is a paragraph on functionalism, there's a paragraph on Marxism. Blue and then a red. So paragraph 2, Marxists would argue that education socially controls to ensure that capitalism is maintained, that the purpose, really, its crux, it's there to maintain an oppressive capitalist system. So social control in education ensures that capitalism is maintained in society. You're passive and docile. So we're going to I'll do it in the order, but Althusser, education is nothing more than an ideological state apparatus. Bowles and Gintis creates good worker attitudes, makes you passive and docile. And again, Bowles and Gintis, they're not being socially controlled very well, are they? They remember that young man who was disappointed when Paul Willis said to him, how are you doing today? And he said, I'm not very happy, to be honest. I had to write my name in PSHE and I wanted to get through the whole year without writing anything. They weren't socially controlled effectively. It was their resistance of education, which is why they ultimately underachieved. So it's those 2. And again, Bourdieu doesn't really work here either. So at the end of that paragraph, this shows that social control in education prepares the working class to accept capitalism as a good system, a good system or a fair system. That's our only option, and this prevents any revolution. Feel free to watch Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, should you wish. Or Money, my favourite Pink Floyd song. But anyway, the prepares the working class to accept capitalism as a good system, as our only option. And the ultimate job of that is to prevent a revolution, is to keep capitalism maintained and keep exploiting us. So for the third paragraph, what you can do, you're going to veer off a little bit here. So you might want to consider that social control, effective social control, can mean, so we've got effective social control, it can mean groups may be easier to teach or engage. So for example, here, you could do Phillips and Palmer. Middle class and more child-centered and can socially control children. So yeah, Phillips and Palmer can effectively socially control children. Might want to maybe add in Douglas on a similar theme. Parental interest is the most important factor. Perhaps sensitive, you could think of a third, maybe Driver and Ballard potentially. This one is definitely a weaker paragraph. Wow, it's got social control here, but it's just veered off a little bit. It's just changed it a little bit. So we need to bring it back with a this shows. So this shows that social control can mean that teachers can ensure learners are engaged, participating, and can achieve as a result. So if there is effective social control, what it can ultimately mean is that they can be engaged, that they are participating and are more likely to perhaps complete homework. I'm a bit obsessed, aren't I, with homework and revision, which will make them more successful. It does always make you more successful. Okay, I think I'm going to leave that there because my meats is starting to slow down, which is not a good sign. So we want differential attainment, cultural defects, formal socialization. See, it doesn't even want to let me highlight it. And where have we gone? Social control are all into your 15 marker grid. What I will do is I'll leave that one there, and then I will do a separate video picking up with equality of opportunity. Thanks, folks.